Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining me for another study of Tanya. We are in the middle of the study. The main theme, chapter 29, is about what happens if there is no sensitivity to godliness. It's very hard. I have a desire for good food. I have a desire for good movie. I have a desire to go and watch sports. I am not interested in studying Torah and prayer. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel good. The rabbi began by sharing with us that just like any object or a piece of wood that you want to have engulfed in flame, you need, if it's too large, the flame will not catch. It has to be chopped into pieces. The body is running naturally by default by the animal soul. And therefore, the animal soul is very coarse and will not allow for the flame to get in. Therefore, it has to be chopped. How do you chop? By putting it down, by screaming at it, by bringing old memories that will make the animal soul lower down its haughtiness. So the rabbi is speaking about first that the idea that even if someone today don't sin like a Benoni, they should bring up the past and start thinking about all the misdeeds in the past, and that's where we ended last time, to assume responsibility and live a full life in Judaism. It entails realizing that every day we need to repent our past. The past can be forgiven, but as I ascend and I study and I connect to God deeper or higher, part of it is the baggage that I bring from the past that needs fixing. Why is it so? So that God knows that we have a true relationship with Him. The way that we relate to God and the way we ask forgiveness today is not the same when we actually ask forgiveness when we were a teenager. Then we just needed to ask forgiveness so we can get the gifts. Now it's a deeper, meaningful relationship, and therefore the forgiveness need to be asked to a much different level. And therefore, says the Rebbe, if any time the animal soul is in control, that's the first thing. Bring up the past and realize that the past, even though it's erased, and it truly is erased, however, as we ascend, it's brought back, and we need to fix it again. That's why the Torah is full with situations where we read that a man must live their life continuously with teshuvah, with repentance. It doesn't mean that a man sins every day. It means that what I repented when I was a year ago is not good enough for today. I hope, is this point clear? Everybody understand that? The second one the rabbi is going to talk is about dreams. I want to give you an introduction to the idea of dreams, and we're going to talk a little bit about dreams today. What do you think? Dreams are for real? It's just an imagination? What do you guys think?
Sometimes they come true.
Sometimes they come true.
Yes,
So
you dream something and it happens a day later, a year later.
So
it's strange.
It's strange. Why is a dream for real, something real, or just an imagination of a free-spirited mind?
Real.
It's real.
Has
Can you
different
elaborate?
symbols. It might have different symbols, but it's, if you understand the symbols, it could be.
If you understand the symbols, it can
Be very real.
All right.
I think it comes out of your subconscious when you're sleeping. Most of the time you don't remember the dream, but the dream is makes enough of an impact. You wake up in the morning, you remember it.
All right. Thank you. Harry says it's your subconscious, and sometimes they have a meaning. All the time or sometimes?
You always have a meaning. You have to learn how to interpret it. We don't.
They always have a meaning. You have to know how to interpret it. Okay. So the prophet tells us, Chalomot shav yedaberu. Dreams are a waste of your time. On the other hand, that's a prophet. I did not make it up. I didn't make it up.
You're told if you have a bad dream, you remember that you should fast or something.
So, but the prophet says, "Chalomot shav yedaberu." Have you heard that phrase? Never.
Do
And
you
you,
think there
and
was
I'm
a
speaking to
time-
one of the greatest scholars in town.
Do you agree with that?
He's not here right now.
Which prophet?
I'm going to give you the exact place. Chalomot shav yedaberu.
Said some of them come true.
I just had weirdest dreams that come through and upwards to things.
Weird. So Rabbi, how do you explain the dreams of Joseph?
Zechariah 12, chapter 12.
Do you agree with them, Rabbi?
Just a minute.
Next question.
Yes.
Do you deal with the dream of Joseph? Bacon the wine steward?
That's what Zechariah 12. Chapter 12, it's a prophet. You can't dispute a prophet.
Never wrong.
They're never wrong.
Both are wrong, they're not prophets.
There will not be prophets. On the other hand, the Torah, the 5 books of Moses, and the Bible is full of dreams and their interpretations. An example with this week's Torah portion. We read about Yosef, the start of the portion, Vayeshev. Yosef had 2 dreams, gathering sheaves of wheat, and you sheaves to his brothers are bowing down to my sheep. And then he dreams about the sun, moon, and the stars. And so it seems like he does have a meaning. We read about Pharaoh's dreams. As Yosef interprets them, they have a meaning. And the repeat of we don't know the meaning. We do know the meaning, but the Torah does not discuss the meaning. The Torah just tells us what he saw. But here by Pharaoh, not only the dreams have a meaning that actually fulfilled, but also the repeat is because it's going to happen soon. So what is this story with dreams? So pretty much to sum up, there is a lot that can take a whole lesson. There are many details into dreams, but the rabbis tell us that it all depends on the person. A person who is a vessel or a vehicle, a vessel to contain godliness, to contain God's energy, will be able to receive dreams that will have meaning. Because all the prophets, with very few exceptions, received their prophecy when? In a dream. Jeremiah would walk in the streets of Jerusalem, fall down on the floor, and prophesize. No prophet have ever, there are exceptions. Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses is the only exception. Every prophet do prophesize when they are asleep, dreaming. So everyone, Samuel, Hannah, his mother, Hannah, I don't know, but Miriam, all that, it was in a dream that later they were able to explain what they saw in a dream, and that was prophecy. So we do see that the both opposites. It all depends how a person conducts himself. The Alter Rebbe, the author of the Tanya, elsewhere explains the following. He says that just like when a person when a person goes to sleep, his body functions to remove all the excess and the unhealthy energy parts to go down. When a person sleeps, the body cleanses itself. The body works with hormones and juices to get cleaned. When a person sleeps, the head gets cleaned up. And the dreams are that part that the body lets go. So if my body is busy during the day with godliness, with positive thoughts, with caring, with looking after other people's needs, when I dream, I will have good dreams and they will have meaning and I'll remember them. Many times there are dreams and we don't remember them. It's part of the issue here. So a dream will have a purpose or a meaning because I had a good day. I lived a good life. So at night when the head cleanses itself of the days thinking and work, the outcome would be whatever is left, and that would be the dreams. Based on that, if I truly want to know the person's true standing vis-a-vis God, pay attention to the dreams. Because during the day, when a person thinks or tells you that they have a good relationship with God, or they're very satisfied in their life, or they are very happy, they can think that way and they can believe it's true, but it may be far from the truth. I'm not speaking about myself. All I'm saying is that when you pay attention to your dreams, it's an unbiased reflection of what's going on in your life. So if someone has a very disturbing dream or very harsh dream, they have to look internally and find out why. When someone has a pleasant dream, happiness, joy, they have to understand that there is a good reason for it. Because the dreams are the true reflection, just like a mirror, of what went on during the day. Do they have meaning? Sometimes they do, sometimes not. Sometimes we understand that everything that was said is correct here. But the part that I want to take, that the rabbi is going to take, is that the dreams are actually a reflection of my true standing. Where am I in my relationship to my soul, godly soul? Where am I with my relationship to God? Will be reflected in the way I remember my dreams, what dreams I had at night. So the rabbi is going to use it to, so to say, put down the animal soul. The rabbi is going to say to us that when a person feels that they are boasting about their greatness and success and happiness and they have everything they want, and when it comes to godliness, prayer, study, it's taking second part. In order for us to break the body and the soul, break spiritually, should look back to the dreams and realize that the dreams are not that holy. Most likely they are not holy, and the Rebbe is pretty sure. And therefore realize that you are very far from where you can be. You are very far where you belong. You are very far from serving God and fulfilling your purpose. And therefore, it's time to change. You need to realize you have to make a U-turn. So the dreams in Kabbalah, and this is what the Tanya is going to teach us, are actually guidelines. They're actually a very true reflection of where we stand in our relationship with our soul, with God. And therefore, that's when we come to those dreams, we bring them back so that we are able to turn to the animal soul and say, that's not good for me. I'm not in a good place. I'm not a happy person. Even though I have all the food that I like and I have all the good friends and I'm seemingly doing very well, but my godly soul is not in that spot. And therefore, that reflected in the dreams.
So what about the people that rarely have dreams?
Rarely have dreams?
Yeah, like one of my uncles, he's saying, I rarely dream when he sleeps. What is that?
I'm not a Kabbalist, so I'm just going to share with you what I studied. The Talmud tells us that if a person did not dream for 3 days in a row, he's a wicked person. Now, it doesn't mean that you remember them. If you know, so when I wake up in the morning, I always know I had a dream. The question is, do I remember my dream? Not necessarily, but I know I had a dream. I was busy at night doing something.
Do you believe in somebody who's dying to come to another person and say goodbye in your dream?
Of course, everything is possible.
Is that the state of the person that expecting the other person to die? Is it real?
I'm not a maven. I really am not a maven. I cannot tell you. I can tell you my father, before he died, I was for 2 weeks with my father nonstop.
Sorry, experiment.
We'll go back to it later. He's probably trying to connect. Let's study it in the text.
Sorry, Rob, I have to go.
What happened? Emergency?
Tell them about-
If you help, you call us. So we are on page 392. Top of 392. This means, I'm repeating one part that we studied before. I'm going to read it quick. This means that he should do the spiritual accounting described below as a master, a proprietor, to whom each set of figures represents either a profit or loss that directly affects him, rather than as a servant, a hired accountant who can view whatever bottom line eventuates with academic detachment. So last time we discussed very briefly, there was a parable, very well known parable among Hasidim. There was a farmer, very wealthy farmer, that didn't know how to read and write. And he hired a teacher to raise his children and teach them Torah. He knew how to read and write. One time the farmer received a letter, but he couldn't read the letter. So he goes to that man that he hired, and he asks him to open and read the letter. As the man reads the letter, the farmer suddenly faints. When they woke him up, they ask him, "Why did you faint?" He says, "The letter reads that my brother just died." So the children turn to their father and say, "We don't understand. You don't know what's written there. This man, our teacher, knows, he read it. How come it didn't affect him? How come he didn't faint? How come you fainted? You just hear that. He reads it. He's much closer to the scene." And what's the answer? The teacher, he reads about somebody he has no idea. He's not one that is invested and involved. It's not his brother. He just read, like reading a newspaper. The farmer, it's his own brother. So upon hearing, it affected him so badly that he fainted. In other words, you can be a tourist, or you can be a local that involved in the community affairs, contributes, make changes, involved in the process, etc. Says the Rebbe that when you do an accounting of where you stand from time to time, not just as an accountant that knows the bottom line and says, well, the bottom line is in the red or in the black, and therefore I need to fix, or I'm doing very well, I can continue. That's not the way. The way to do it, it's like the owner of the store who makes sure that if it's in the red, he has to fix it. He has to let go of some employees. He has to make changes. Otherwise, there is no reason for the accounting. This means, says the Rebbe, that he should take stock with his soul of all his thoughts, utterances, and actions that have come and gone since the day he came into being and until the present day. Were they all of the realm of holiness or of the realm of impurity God delivers us? These latter realms include also any thoughts, utterance, or action not directed towards God, His will and His service, even when they are not actually sinful. Since this is the meaning of the term sitra achra, not necessarily evil, but simply the other side, the side realm that is not holy. Thus, anything that does not contain holiness belongs to the realm of impurity, as explained earlier in chapter 6. Now it is known that whenever a person thinks holy thoughts, he becomes during that time a chariot for the chambers, a chalot of holiness, whence these thoughts originates, or more precisely, whence this vitality originates. Becoming a chariot means that he becomes completely subservient to these eichalot, to these chambers, to the same degree that a vehicle, having no will of its own, is completely subservient to its driver's will. When he meditates on the love of God, for example, he becomes a vehicle for the supernal chamber of love, and so on. And conversely, when he thinks impure thoughts, he becomes an unclean vehicle for the eichalot of impurity. from where all impure thoughts originate, so too with speech and action. We will see the points the Rabbi is making. Let me summarize very briefly. According to Kabbalah and Jewish thought, and it's accepted by all, when I use my garments, my thought, speech, or action in a positive service of God, to improve my life, to care for others, to study Torah, to fulfill God's commandments, I am a chariot, I am a vehicle, I am a car in which God is able to drive. I am becoming part of God in the way that I am totally nullified to God. So when I pray, when I study Torah, when I'm involved in helping someone cross the street, doing a favor, giving somebody advice, it doesn't matter when, I am actually godly. What happens when I am not? Then I am a chariot to the defiled energy that God created to challenge me. There are no two ways. We studied in chapter 6 and earlier, there's black and white. Either it's godly or it's ungodly. Ungodly can be seen, ungodly can be allowed activities. It's not necessarily a sin, but it's not godly. I am separated from God. If I'm separated from God, I'm a vehicle to the evil, unclean forces. And therefore, I take energy that God gave me and I'm wasting it. I'm giving it to the evil forces. Did I make myself clear? Says the Rebbe, if you take stock about your conduct and you pass, you will realize you have a lot to repair. And therefore, you have no reason to boast about yourself, how great you are and how special you are, because at the end of the day, other people might have been much greater in their way that they are a chariot to God. And by me, my thought, my speech, my action, even a Benoni, is not necessarily always for God's sake. That's another point the Rabbi is making. So the first point is talking about the past deeds, that teshuva is required continuously as we ascend closer to God. The second one, the Rabbi says, be an accountant that own the business and say to yourself, how many hours of my day am I truly am a part of God? God gave us an opportunity to glue ourselves to Him. But when we choose not to glue, we are gluing to the evil forces, because it has to be one of the two. There is no in the middle. And therefore, any moment, any time, any activity, any situation where I choose not to glue and to connect to God, I'm gluing to the opposite. And then if you take stock of all the past, you realize that you have a lot of energy that's wasted, a lot of days, a lot of life that is being wasted. That's why, by the way, everything for a tzaddik, a righteous man, and we will elaborate on that concept in many, many other parts of Torah. Last week we read about Yaakov, that he was left alone across the river. Why was he there alone to face the angel? Anybody knows? He forgot small jugs. Anybody heard that? What are small jugs? Disposable plates. He forgot few paper cups, paper plates. And the rabbis are asking, Yaakov was one of the wealthiest men, definitely very wealthy. Just looking at the sheer number of gifts that he prepared for his brother, there must have been like $250,000 in today's value for sure. You count the camels, horses, donkeys, sheep, goats, and he had servants and maids. He sent them with shepherds. He was a very wealthy man. Why did he return for a bunch of paper cups? Probably a dozen plastic cups that you use once. That's what he forgot. Pachim ktanim, small jugs. Why did he do it?
His sparks.
Very good. And the answer is, if I own those cups, those paper goods, it means that God has given me I'm taking a different route. God gave me a gift now, and God's seal is on those paper cups. Now, if you get something with the seal of the White House, the President of the United States, without getting into details, which president. Let's say it's from Abraham Lincoln, or it's from JFK. Would you say, oh, it's just paper good? Of course not. You're going to cherish that plate. You're going to cherish that napkin. Even if it's a napkin that you have a signature of a president. God forbid, if you drop it and you know well that you lost it, left it somewhere, and they're not going back, people are going to look at you and say, you're meshuggah. You're stupid. That's exactly the way Yaakov viewed. Because if he earned those paper cups, small jugs, it's a gift that God in particular assigned them and gave it to him. And therefore he had to cherish it. Then he wouldn't give up. That's why a tzaddik, someone who is meticulous about earning a living in honesty, not taking money that don't belong to them or resources, they will be very frugal. Not because they are stingy, but because every penny accounts, because it's a gift that God has given me for a purpose. And that sits very well with the sparks, but I want to take it, I want to show it you in a different angle. That's why he is a what? What?
You don't waste any, and that's how you make money.
Okay.
I don't know.
You need to have good luck too, right?
That's right.
You need to have good luck and a blessing.
Very well.
I know many frugal people. I know many frugal people that are not that wealthy.
It was a big question.
I just want to show it to you. It may be Lashon Hara, but the person is not around anymore. She died. I moved to town and somebody gave me a name of a person who was on the stock, playing on the stock. He was a stockbroker. And he says to me, he has a client, it was a secret. And nobody knows, but she's doing very well. So I should ask her for help. So I called, invited her. So she came, this is when I was very young. So she came Friday night. And during the meal, she says, you have a family. At the time I had 2 children. I said, yeah. She says, you need to learn how to save. I says, okay, how? At the time I had no money, so there was nothing to save. She says, listen to me, take it from me. I never used, when I flush the toilet in the tank, I never use regular water. I take spoiled soup or anything I cook and I pour it in there. I was very young at the time. And it was very hard for me to keep my mouth shut. Because it was said in my home, I respect that person. But I dropped that number of that person. I don't think being frugal, this is to an extreme. This is a very unhealthy. I'm taking an extreme because being frugal is not necessarily the way to, by the way, being frugal with ourselves, but not with others. If somebody else needs help, we should be very generous and very kind to them. Right? You understand that, right? Okay. Who somebody else? I had another. Oh, I'm sorry.
What was Yaakov? He was a prince by himself.
That's the biggest question.
He should have gone with someone.
Why was he by himself? He should have not been there by himself. Yeah, it's very true. All right, let's continue. Now so again, the first attitude the person should have is about all the misdeeds, all the sins that need to be fixed and they continuously need to be corrected. The second one is look at your day-to-day life and realize that your energy is not always to connect with God, but if it's not to connect with God, it's going the other way, disconnect from God. And therefore, you need to repent, you need to fix, you need to bring it back. The third thing the rabbi is going to talk is about dreams, as I've shared with you at the beginning of the class. Thus, even one who cannot, just a minute, even one who cannot call to mind any past sins can humble his spirit by contemplating how often he has become a vehicle for impurity through his thoughts, words, and action, which, though not sinful, were still of the realm of the Sitra Achra. since they were not directed towards godliness. As we shared in chapter 3, 4, 5, 6, either we are part of godliness or we are part of the other side. If it's a mitzvah, part of godliness. If it's not a mitzvah, we're part of the other side. So it may not be a sin, but it's energy that's totally wasted. In addition, says the Rebbe, let him further consider his dreams, in order to humble his spirit, for one may learn more about himself from his dreams than from his waking conscious thoughts. For the most part, they are vanity and an affliction of the spirit, because his soul does not ascend heavenward during his sleep, since it is written, who shall ascend the mountain of the Lord? Meaning, in our context, whose soul shall rise heavenward while he sleeps to see and absorb matters of Torah and holiness, which will in turn be reflected in his dreams. And the text verse gives the answer. He that has clean hands and pure heart, implying that the soul of one whose hands and heart are not pure does not ascend. And that is why his dreams are a patchwork of vanity and foolishness. In other words, says the Rebbe, undoing the dream, when a person has these difficult dreams or challenging dreams or dreams of vanity, it is because his soul is not able to ascend, connect to God. Why? Because their activity during the day. Furthermore, those originating from the evil side come and attach themselves to him and inform him in his dreams of mundane affairs, and sometimes mock him and show him false things and torment him in his dreams, and so on, as stated in the Zohar on Vayikra, page 25a and b. See it there discussed at length. We thus see from the Zohar that one may evaluate himself by studying the content of his dreams. Therefore, he can humble his spirit even if he finds himself free of sin, and in this way he may crush the Sitra Achra within him, as explained above. So says the Rebbe, a third way to crush or to humble a person, go back to your dreams, because the dreams are unbiased description or reflection of where you stand. If you have good dreams, holy dreams, happy dreams, you're in a good spot. If you have difficult dreams, harsh dreams, dreams that you don't even remember that you had a dream, then the Sitra Achra is holding and mocking you, making fun of you, not allowing their soul to ascend high. The longer he reflects on these matters, both in his own thoughts and by delving deeply into books which speak of these matters, in order to break down his heart within him and render himself shamed and despised in his own eyes, as is written in Scripture, so utterly despised that he despises his very life. The more he despises and degrades him, thereby the Sitra Achra casting it down to the ground and humbling it from its haughtiness and pride and self-exaltation, wherewith it exalts itself over the light of the divine soul's holiness, obscuring its radiance. What the Rabbi is saying, that is one of those three should assist us in humbling this animal soul, lowering it from its spot up high and making it sense that there is a distance to go to connect to God. Up to now, the Alter Rebbe has proposed means of crushing the Sitra Achra within one's animal soul by humbling his own spirit through intellectual contemplation. He now turns to another method, that of raging against one's evil impulse without entering into an analysis of his spiritual level. So until now, it's contemplation. Think about your past, think about what you did to Shuban, think about the dreams. Then now the Rebbe is giving a shoulder, start yelling and screaming at yourself. Take yourself aside when nobody can hear you, while you're taking a shower or when you're far in the forest, and yell at yourself. By the way, this is a method. Anybody heard of Breslev, Reb Nachman of Breslev? Breslev Hasidim, they go at night, they go to the forest, they go far away, and they start screaming and yelling at themselves, and then they calling out to God. Says the Rebbe, he should also thunder against it, the Sitra Achra, with a strong and raging voice in order to humble it. As our sages state, a person should always rouse a good impulse against the evil impulse, as it is written, rage and sin not. This means that one should rage in his mind against the animals. He doesn't have to utter it in words, but only in his mind is enough. Against the animal soul, which is his evil impulse, with a voice of stormy indignation, saying to it, indeed you are truly evil and wicked, abominable, loathsome, and disgraceful, and so forth, using all the epithets by which our sages have called it. In other words, use all kinds of curses and harsh language against the evil soul, saying to him, you rob me of my great gift that God has given me to bond and be part of God. How long will you obscure the light of the blessed Ein Sof, which pervades all the worlds, which was, is, and will be the same, even in the very place where I stand, just as the light of the blessed Ein Sof alone before the world was created, utterly unchanged. As it is written, I, the Lord, have not changed. That is, the fact of creation has wrought no change in him, for he transcends time, and so on. And therefore, the fact that it is not after creation cannot affect him. And you, repulsive one, and so forth, deny the truth which is so plainly visible, that all is truly so nothing in his presence, a truth which is so apparent as to be visible to the eye. In this way, he will help his divine soul, enlightening its eyes to perceive the truth of the unity of the infinite light of Ensof, as though with physical sight and not merely through the lesser perception, hearing, and understanding. As for example, as explained elsewhere, this is the core of the whole divine service. And the rabbi is going to get into details, and I want to give you a short introduction. What the rabbi is talking about is not the Hasidic way, but sometimes we need to chop down the big piece of wood, the soul, the human is becoming so haughty that it needs to be crushed. So one way was using contemplation, another way is yelling internally, yelling at the soul, at the animal soul. Why are you dividing? Why are you separating me from God? Why are you taking me from the source of energy and life and positivity? By doing so continuously, screaming and yelling, the evil soul will humble itself and the godly soul will come back. I want to share with you a few stories that express that. In the Chabad Yeshiva, I'm not going to go into the details, the technical details, although they are part of the story. I'm going to speak them. In the Chabad Yeshiva, the fifth Lubavitcher Rebbe, the grandfather of the Rebbe's wife, established a yeshiva called Tomchit Mimim that all Chabad Hasidim go to, and it's a system where you learn in addition to Talmud, Mishnah, and Gemara, you also learn Kabbalah, Hasidic teaching like Tanya and Hasidic teaching. His son later became the sixth Chabad Rebbe, was the principal, was the dean, was the one in charge of the yeshiva. They were very careful in their selections of who belonged to that yeshiva. One time, a young boy came to travel to Lubavitch, and he wanted to be accepted to yeshiva. The problem was he was a Ilui. He was a very, very unique prodigy, and he studied Torah so well, and he knew so much. He was a very advanced, way advanced, very, very smart. On the other hand, he was very haughty. He was boasting about his achievements. He was boasting about his greatness, that he's the best, he's the unique, the best one in his town. And he was he wasn't a humble person. But the Rebbe when he came to speak, the Rebbe saw that this man's soul is very high, very special soul. But it's got so coarse, it's so obscured the soul with his conduct and his sense about self-centeredness that it covered the soul. So the Rebbe turned to his son, who's the dean of the yeshiva, and he says, he is the example of the Tanya that you need to, it's a big bullock, it's a big piece of wood that needs to be chopped into small pieces. I need you to chop him into small pieces. So the Rebbe told him that this was just before Passover. So the Rebbe told him that he's going to, before he's entered to yeshiva or a condition, the condition, he has to work very hard in the bakery. Before Passover, they had a matzah bakery. And matzah bakery is a very tedious, very hard work because you have to knead the dough all day continuously. It takes a lot of energy. After an hour, 2 hours, you lose, the muscles hurt, and it's very difficult. The Rebbe says, you're going to stand there for 10 hours a day. You'll have to do it a whole day. And then on your extra time, when everybody rests or go out, take a walk, you have to learn by heart a lot of discourses of Hasidic. It really became a slavery for this man for 2 weeks before Passover. His labor was so intense and worked so hard that by the time the Passover Seder came, and the whole yeshiva was celebrating the Seder with the Rebbes, with the Rebbe and his son, this man was totally knocked out. And when he came in, his face was red from sweat and hard work. The Rebbe turned to his son and he says, you see, look at the shiny light that shines through his face now. The Rebbe was able to see the spirituality that came out of the breakage of the crushing of his haughtiness and self-centeredness. And he became a very refined human being. But that happened only after literally crushing his evil, crushing his negative traits, crushing his self-centeredness, making him feel that he is not the best, but perhaps he has a lot to learn from anybody around him. So that's one example the rabbis that's one story, but the rabbi is going to get into an example that I think is important to share. Anybody heard the story of the spies, the 12 spies of the sun? What happened there? 12 holy men, right? Yeah, Harry, they were holy? At the time, they were holy. They were chosen because they were leaders of tribes, right? The only tribe that didn't go was Levi tribe, thank you. So 12 tribes are sent, 12 men, and they go, they are the mavens. They are the wisest, that's why they were chosen. And they are the most knowledgeable in war tactics. Otherwise, they wouldn't be sent. And it's a delegation of groise machers, of big kahunas. And they toured the Holy Land for how long? Anybody? 40 days, that's correct. For 40 days, they go around, they're checking the places, they're checking the army bases, they're checking the cities, the water, the plants, and they come back and they have a full report. They're not just nobodies. They have a full report, and based on their report, it's virtually impossible. There is no chance to conquer and enter the Holy Land. So far, so good. Do we all agree on that? And what happened to the Jewish people? They decided not to go to Israel. What are they going to do? No, nitna rosh v'nashuva Mitzrayim. Let us find another leader. Rosh is leader, and let's return back to Egypt. We would rather be slaves. At least we'll be alive. There we're going to be killed, brutally killed. This is so far the text. Harry, am I correct? 100%. Harry says 100%, so I can continue. What goes on next? Yoshua and Caleb tells them that it's possible, and the people wanted to stone them, literally stone them. But God appears, and Moshe speaks to the Jewish people, rebuking them, just like what we read now. How long will you rebels not learned a lesson. You are the worst type of humans. You are so ungrateful for so much kindness that God is giving you. All Moshe does is harsh rebuke. And what happened after that? Anybody knows what happened after that?
They wanted to go be identified.
No, they cried in their tents. And God said, you cry tonight, you'll be crying in the future. You're saying 40
That's not what happened then. It happened later. You're mixing two movies. They said, let us go to the Holy Land. Let's go. As the Rebbe is going to ask, what made them change their mind? Moshe did not dispute any of the claims. It didn't prove they were not telling the truth. They actually told the truth. It didn't tell them there are different dimensions. All it does, it says, you rebels, you are despicable human beings that don't appreciate God's kindness. That's all. Now, the same story happened over and over. With Korach, for example, they rebel against Moshe. So Moshe performs a miracle to prove that he is right. The people every time they had a complaint or an issue, and many other times, God has proven them that he really means it and it will happen. Here, by the spies, he didn't prove anything. He didn't say to them, you're wrong. He said, you're wrong, but not because of their calculations or their conclusion. They are wrong because they didn't have faith in God. But he didn't prove that they are wrong. Says the Rebbe, the reason is because the evil is an imagination. Evil is not real. Holiness is real, just like light and darkness, as we'll get to in a moment. But I love the idea of the spice. And therefore, all that God needed is to dispel the darkness, the evil. He didn't need to convince them that God is going to perform a miracle. He didn't need to convince them it's going to happen. He didn't need to prove any point. All he had to say to them, you rebels have gotten over yourself with the evil inclination. Once they heard those words, they realized the truth of it, and they shook it off. And now they're going to back. They want to go back. So there was no need to prove that they are incorrect in their assumption. There was no need to make a miracle to prove that God is going to perform miracles. No need for that. All he needed is to shell off the evil from holding them. Just like darkness and light. How do you dispel darkness? By striking a match. You don't fight darkness. Darkness is a non-existence. In the place where there is no light comes darkness. But darkness on its own is not a reality. It's not something that exists. The same applies with every aspect between evil forces and godly forces. Somebody use an example of viruses. There are different viruses that change DNA, and they have no identity of their own. All they do is they steal the identity of the body where they are holding, and they are eating up. In other words, the virus does not have an identity of its own. They're faking by stealing someone else's identity. This is the evil. So when those spies, the 12 spies, come back, they were boasting because they were so haughty, because the blood got to their head. And what does God do? Just make sure to remind them that this is an animal soul. It's the evil forces of the energy of God, of the world, and therefore that woke them up to realize that, and they reconnected with God. Now they want to go back to Israel. This is what the rabbi is going to say. I want to read it because I want to move on with this. The reason that humbling the spirit of the Sitra Achra is effective in crushing it is that in truth there is no substance whatsoever to Sitra Achra. That is why it is compared to darkness, which has no substance whatsoever and is automatically banished by the presence of light. So good and evil is compared to light and darkness. Similarly, with the Sitra Achra, indeed, it possesses abundant vitality, with which to animate all the impure animals and the souls of the nations of the world, and also the animal soul of the Jew, as has been explained. Yet this vitality is not its own, God forbid, but stems from the realm of holiness. For the realm of holiness is the source of all life, including even the life force of the Sitra Achra, as has been explained above. Therefore, it is completely nullified in the presence of holiness, as darkness is nullified in the presence of physical light. Its power lies only in the fact that, in regards to the holiness of man's divine soul, God has given it, the Sitra Achra, permission and ability to raise itself against it, the divine soul, in order that man should be roused to overpower it and to humble it by means of the humility and submission of his spirit, and being abhorrent and despised in his own eyes. For through this he humbles the Sitra Achra and abhors it. And the arousal of men below to crush the Sitra Achra causes an arousal above to fulfill what is written. From there will I bring you down, says God, to the Sitra Achra, which seeks to rise against godliness and to obscure it. Says the rabbi, God has created the animal soul to challenge us, to bond us with God to a much stronger level. And therefore, just like our foremothers, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, could not have children, part of the reason they couldn't have children is because God wanted them to cry and to pour out their heart. I'm not trying to judge, that's not my place, but that's what the sages tell us. In other words, just because of that, they were coming much closer to God. It brought them closer. So a challenge, sometimes a difficulties, a hardship, is not because God wants to have fun, or God is trying to punish us for, is taking an account for something we did before. Quite the opposite. God wants to give us an opportunity to connect deeper, from a deeper level. When we have a challenge, and those of us who have been to JLI, most of us are here in JLI, we're going to speak about it, God willing, in the next lesson, that the difficulties are a challenge that are placed for us to bond. I think we spoke about it in previous lesson as well. In other words, it's not bad. It's not for no reason. It is for us to overcome. Once we overcome it, we are able to connect on a much higher level, a much greater degree. Just like I think in lesson 2, we spoke about when someone is speaking or saying something that we don't like, and we give them the respect by listening, not hearing, by listening to them, that say to them, oh, he respects me, he likes me, he appreciates me, and therefore I'm going to get closer. So for us to overcome that challenge and stand silently while they speak, even though we didn't learn something new, even though what they say we may disagree with, but just the fact that we show respect by giving the time makes the bond between two parties, two people, a much stronger bond. That explains why we have the evil. So when we scream at it, the first 3 methods of cognitive, we scream at it, it will go away, it will disappear. Why? Because it has no identity on its own. It's only there when there is no godliness. Once you start screaming and you repeat it a few times, then you come to a realization that godliness is the truth, and that takes away the evil soul, that it loses its identity. We'll stop here and continue next week, God willing.
Tremendous imperfection, self-introspection, for us to come to a realization that we have to do better.
Of course, 100%.